Welcome to the Hormone Hub, your go-to source for the conversations every woman in her 40s and 50s needs to have. I'm your host, Kylie Pinwill, your nutritionist helping you navigate your way through perimenopause, menopause and beyond so you can say goodbye to the endless fatigue, unexplained weight gain, hot flushes, PMS, mood changes and more that come on this hormonal roller coaster. If you missed the memo or think this is only for women of a certain age, ladies, it's time to think again. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my latest episodes, which are released every week. Share it with your friends, your sweaty sisters. The more we talk, the more we help each other. Hello, ladies. It's Kylie from the Hormone Hub. How are we? This is an episode that I've really been looking forward to. All right, estrogen. Do we have too much or too little? Okay, at either end of the spectrum, either having too much estrogen or too little can be problematic. So today we're going to chat about what is estrogen, what does it do for us, what happens if we're too high, what happens if we're too low, and what we can do about either end of the scale. So while estrogen is essentially a female hormone, men do make it in small amounts for sure. It plays a big role in our reproductive health. It also promotes new bone growth, preventing osteoporosis. It helps support our cardiovascular health and also protects us from insulin sensitivity as well. So the challenge with estrogen is when it's too much in comparison to other hormones, particularly in ratio to progesterone, and also if there's too much of a particular type of estrogen in relationship to the other types of estrogen, and also when it is too low. So, essentially that's generally when we've been through menopause. So estrogen is one of our main sex hormones. It's made in our ovaries, and also it's good to know that small amounts are also made in our fat cells and also our adrenal glands. So when we go through menopause, our ovaries stop making estrogen, but our body still makes small amounts in our fat glands and adrenal glands. So the more fat mass that we're carrying, the more estrogen our body's producing. So estrogen, obviously plays a big role in our fertility. So it gives us, when we go through puberty, it gives us boobs, it gives us curves, it lays down fat on our hips, our thighs, our bums. So, that lower half of our body. Now, when there's too much estrogen, it can promote fluid retention. And often, when women wake up feeling flat, feeling bloated, retaining fluid, I've heard clients talk about, they gained 3 kilos overnight. Now, I want you to know that this isn't body fat. It's fluid that's being retained. And estrogen's a big driver of this. So until, our hormones sort of return to balance and settle down, this is a really good reason to also chuck your scales out, ladies, because, fluid that we're holding on to, it does not count as body fat. Get off the scales. All right. So there are a lot of other reasons for fluid retention, but estrogen is the likely culprit when it comes to excess estrogen. So if we have too much estrogen, this is where this can drive headaches, including migraines. It can increase our blood clotting. It can kill our libido. Like, seriously, let's face it, who's feeling sexy when you're feeling all bloated and puffy? It can interfere with our thyroid production. And, there's also big health consequences of having too much estrogen. So too much estrogen, if we think of that as being quite inflammatory. So estrogen is our dominant hormone when we're menstruating and in the lead up to our menstrual cycle. And, we produce a relatively small amount of progesterone. And, when we're under stress, our body shuts down progesterone. So that, if you kind of think about it, that just having that low progesterone and that higher level of estrogen, the ratios can go out so quickly and so easily. So, when it comes to stress, estrogen is our dominant hormone because, in the lead up to, like I said, when we're under stress, our body prioritizes the stress hormones, not progesterone. So this is because, it's kind of like a natural built-in thing. Our body doesn't want us to go off and conceive a baby if we're under stress. It could be that there's a famine and, now is not the time to have a baby. It could be that, we're being chased by a tiger. We don't want to get pregnant right now. So this is where our body goes and shuts down our happy, calming hormone, which is progesterone. So estrogen and cortisol both signal our bodies to store fat. When we've lost that happy hormone calming presence of progesterone, estrogen and stress hormones take over. They signal our body to store fat. And if we sort of think of progesterone, like I said, our happy, calming hormone, if we have got a naturally low level of progesterone, or, we're going through perimenopause, our body is naturally producing lower levels of progesterone, this wreaks havoc on our emotional, physical well-being. So we can go from feeling happy, healthy, balanced, energized, we can have great clarity of mind, even calm mood, and, to having like the total opposite. So if you are feeling brain foggy, if you're feeling utterly exhausted, puffy, heavy, bloated, full of fluids, that feeling that your clothes are getting tighter by the minute. And, this can be just for the first part of your cycle. So when we sort of look at, and you might have heard the term estrogen dominance. So this gets thrown around. It's not a medically diagnosed condition, but certainly it's something that we can all relate to. So what we're talking about is higher levels of estrogen in relation to progesterone. So this estrogen dominance, for want of a better terminology, it's the main biochemical basis of PMS. Because we're not producing enough progesterone, which is all of our beautiful, calm, fat-burning qualities. So, the symptoms that you've got too much estrogen going on and, include low progesterone, PMS symptoms, premenstrual migraines, irregular or heavy, excessively heavy periods, anxiety, nervousness, and that feeling that, you can't take in a full breath, so you've got that shallow breathing happening. And then, these are all signs and symptoms of low progesterone. So estrogen dominance, irregular periods, excessive vaginal bleeding, bloating, fluid retention, breast swelling and tenderness, decreased libido, irritability, depression, weight gain around the tummy and hips, cold hands, feet, headaches. These are all common hormonal imbalances in menstruating women. I always feel like I'm bringing a bit of doom and gloom to the podcast when I talk about this stuff. But, just be mindful too, not all of these symptoms happen for all women and none of them last forever either. But it's good to know, what's happening. So if you're sort of nodding yes to any of these, know that you're not alone. Know that it's there's something hormonal going on. And then, you're able to do something about it for sure. So have faith, it does get better. But, what I want to do is just highlight some of these hormonal imbalances. So it goes to show that, there's a lot happening through perimenopause. And, I'm starting to, get more and more clients sort of mention that they're seeing it in their kids as well. So if you've got teenage daughters or, in their 20s and, you're starting to recognize these hormonal imbalances in them as well, or potentially you've had this your whole kind of menstruating life as well. So what we need to do first up is figure out, do we have the symptoms of estrogen dominance? Is it because we've got too much estrogen? Or is it because we have significantly low progesterone? Or is it both? So, if we have low progesterone, we may actually, in fact, have the right levels, the optimal levels of estrogen. But because your progesterone is low, which is really common, mind you, in perimenopause, that's one of the first sort of physiological things that happens is our natural production of progesterone drops. So, so we've got low progesterone and then we've got excess estrogen, floating around. So when we've got this excess estrogen, we've got to think about where it's coming from. So it can come from environmental exposures. So this is where, it can come from, and, we see it in young girls. So young girls, particularly if they've got excess body fat, because remember, our fat cells produce estrogen. This can happen not just in young girls. It can also happen in boys, women, men. Our fat cells do produce estrogen, and this increased estrogen in our environment, which comes from things like pesticides, herbicides, plastics. So, we never want to put any or heat any kind of plastic. Don't put it in the dishwasher, don't put it in the microwave, because it appears that it's affecting our endocrine systems. So it's good to be sort of aware of those environmental, sort of estrogenic driving chemicals that we're naturally exposed to. And also our liver plays a huge role in balancing our hormones. So when we're talking about all this excess estrogen, so it can come from environmental, exposure. It can come from because we've just naturally got low progesterone, or it can be our body recycling estrogen. So what happens here? So our liver is responsible for breaking down any excess hormones, any toxins, chemicals, alcohol, caffeine, all the things, and getting rid of it. Now, because our body makes estrogen, it's not a priority for our liver if our liver is already a bit busy doing other stuff. So if our liver's a bit sluggish, if it's a bit overworked, it's going to prioritize what it needs to and detox what it needs to, because, for our body, as far as it's concerned, estrogen isn't a high priority. So if you think of a vacuum cleaner filter, and I've used this analogy, 100 times before, so you may have heard it already. It's when, we pull out our vacuum cleaner, can't be bothered emptying the filter, it's kind of full, but we do the vacuuming and it picks up the bits anyway. So then we go, all right, then off we go, toddle off to the bin, empty out our vacuum cleaner filter, pop it back in, go back and do the vacuuming, and we're like, whoa, man, this makes a difference. Now, our liver's the same. We give it some love, we make sure it's working more effectively, and then all of a sudden it's filtering things a bit better. And I'll get on to how we do that in a second. So when our liver decides to recirculate this estrogen around, it changes the form that it's in. So, estrogen, we've got lots of different forms, like 4 kind of key forms of estrogen in our body. And one of these particular forms that it gets turned into when it starts getting recycled in our body. So if you think we've got this month's estrogen, then that recycles, we've got last month's estrogen. And then, if we've got estrogen from previous months, even if your body is great at producing progesterone really well, if we, have all this excess estrogen, we can end up with too much. And, regardless, and our body just can't keep up with it, regardless of where it came from. So internally, externally, what we need to do is make sure that we are able to detoxify and excrete efficiently our excess estrogen once it's done its job in the body. This Hormone Hub episode is sponsored by my popular workshop, which is now available on demand, The Ultimate Guide to Balancing Your Hormones. If you're constantly feeling tired, struggling with weight gain, PMS, mood swings, bloating, not sleeping at night, cravings, anxiety, blah, 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 all the things, these are all frustrating signs of a hormonal imbalance, and I'm ready to help. In this free masterclass, I explain what causes this hormone imbalance and, most importantly, what you can do about it. I'll give you some awesome practical solutions so you can ditch those sugar cravings, regain your energy, and shift that stubborn weight that's been growing around your middle. The link with all the details is on our show notes or over at kyliepinwell.com. Okay, so what can we do about high estrogen? So while it is really common, it's actually not normal to have high estrogen, all right? We are not supposed to get PMS. Your periods are just supposed to turn up with no fluid retention, no bloating, no cramping, no food cravings, no mood swings. And it just doesn't. It just doesn't turn up, So think of it as your body asking you to do something differently. If you are having, any of these kind of signs and symptoms, what's your body asking you to do? What's it asking you to eat? What's it asking you to drink? Is it asking you to move more? Think, be still, reduce your stress. So when we think of too much estrogen, it can also play a role in hormone-driven cancers. So we want to be mindful of this. We can't just sort of dismiss it. So it's that new recycled form of estrogen that, there's direct links to show that excess estrogen has a link to, breast cancers, ovarian cancers, cervical cancers. So this is where, we really want to make sure that we take this kind of seriously. So when we feel stressed, we know that a big part of having too much estrogen is because our body's prioritizing our stress hormones versus making our calming hormone progesterone. So this doesn't necessarily mean that we need to get rid of everything. We need to turn our life upside down. But if we just did one thing, if we took better care of our liver, we know that this, high estrogen or this estrogen dominance would be less of a problem. So looking after our liver is one of the best steps that we can take to, make sure we're clearing that excess estrogen. This in turn keeps our breast tissue a lot healthier. Things like fibroids, polyps, like any kind of hormonal driven anomalies, can be helped by supporting our liver. So we know that alcohol consumption is linked with breast cancer. So we really do need to have a think about how much we're drinking. And, the research is also suggesting that if you have a family history of breast cancer, there actually is no safe level of alcohol consumption. And this is a big thing because what I want you to think about is, alcohol, it doesn't have to be something that we do on the daily. It can, you can still save it for special occasions. You can cut it down for, 1 or 2 nights a week. And my rule of thumb with clients and, something I also try and live by, because as I love my glass of wine, but I do try and have just 1 or 2 drinks, 1 or 2 days a week. So, and, then moving on to caffeine, like, are you having a double shot latte? Could it be a single shot? Can we go from 2 or 3 coffees a day and cut it back to 1 coffee a day? So we don't have to get rid of, all of these things completely. But what I want you to do is think about reducing the load on your liver. So are you doing better than before? If we're doing better than before, that's awesome. Okay. And what I encourage you to do is try it for a couple of cycles to see how you feel. Do you have less bloating? Do you have less fluid? What are we eating? Are we eating lots of leafy green vegetables? Are we eating enough vegetables? Are we eating enough fiber? Are we eating enough food? There's so many women I speak to, you're just not eating enough food. Ladies, it's okay to eat. Okay, so we want to think of this as a big, prioritize what's on your plate. Make sure you're getting your veggies in. Make sure you're getting that fiber in. Now, also exercise, move your body. Everything works better when we're moving, okay? If you think of it, everything moves when we move, all right? So if we want to move out that excess estrogen, we need to move our bodies, and that doesn't necessarily mean we need to go and join boot camp or CrossFit. It just means moving in a way that feels good for you, because if it feels good for you, you'll keep going. All right. So now we'll sort of move on to the ladies who may have symptoms of low estrogen. So generally, the ladies who've been through menopause or are well on their way to menopause will know the signs and symptoms of low estrogen. So this is where we're talking about hot flashes, we're talking night sweats, where, you might notice that your periods become, lighter, less regular. We know that, and this is how we can see that your body is naturally producing less estrogen. So things like it also has a knock-on effect to, emotionally, anxiety that we've never had before can kick in, that brain fog, feeling overwhelmed, insomnia can be a big one for a lot of women, and dryness. So dryness if you think of estrogen as a lubricant, so, dry skin, dry hair, some ladies' hair might be falling out, brittle nails, dry eyes, vaginas, painful sex, this is all a sign that your estrogen levels have dropped. And we want to make sure that you're supporting that. So this is where it's important to have a look at, where you're at. So 30% of women will sail through menopause and barely bat an eyelid, not even have a symptom, maybe one or two here and there. They're going to be fine. All right. Now, if that's you, that's awesome. And do you really need HRT? No, I don't believe you do, because, you're not showing any signs or symptoms. Now, 30% of women will have debilitating symptoms. It's going to affect their everyday, day-to-day life. Okay. So 100%, it's okay to put your hand up and ask for help. And then the rest of everyone is going to lie in that middle area. Okay. So this is where, you've got to choose what's right for you. And this is where I want to help you know what your options are, know where you kind of fit in. So, you can make the choice. But either way, wherever you fit, there is so much that we can do with making sure that you're eating a balanced diet and the right, balance of nutrients to support your blood sugar, to support your thyroid, to support, your energy levels, and also exercise, daily exercise, manage your stress, like getting on top of the way you respond to stress is huge. Now, if you are in that sort of zone where you're thinking about HRT, or as it's now known, MHT, which is menopause hormone therapy, we need to sort of have a look at, where you are at, okay? Because if you are taking the wrong type, there's potential for you to make things worse, all right? Now, especially if you're experiencing debilitating everyday symptoms, you need to know that you're getting the right type. So if you are in perimenopause and you have high levels of estrogen, or that ratio of estrogen to progesterone is out, and you are put on estrogen therapy, it's giving you more estrogen. And the thing is, some doctors understand this beautifully. They understand perimenopause, they understand that high estrogen, low progesterone, and they understand that you need a progesterone support. You've already got plenty of estrogen. You don't need any more of that. But a lot of doctors don't get a lot of training in this area. And the thing is, bioidentical or body identical hormones are fairly new in the medical world. Okay. So a lot of doctors don't have the training. They don't have the, this in their toolkit. So what's traditionally been available for doctors to prescribe has been estrogen only, and it's in a synthetic form of estrogen. Generally, it's in a higher dose, which means that, it's giving you more estrogen than you actually need. So what we want to do is make sure that we've got an estrogen in the form of a body identical form. So generally this is in a patch or a gel or a cream, so it's absorbed through your skin. So this has the benefits of giving you a much lower dose of what estrogen therapy used to be. So, a lot less risk. So like I said, if you are in perimenopause and you've already got high estrogen based on the symptoms I've talked about today, and you're given an estrogen therapy, run a mile, because that's not the right form for you. You could also do with some progesterone support, which is going to help that ratio between progesterone and estrogen. Now, even if you have been through menopause, to go on a low dose progesterone, and generally, again, it's a body identical progesterone in the form of micro-ionized progesterone. So this is a really low dose of natural estrogen, because if you are on the pill, the Mirena, any kind of, these are all progestins, which are synthetic progesterones. So they're not going to be as beneficial for you as a microionized progesterone. So I hope that makes sense. It's a bit of a mouthful, I have to say. All right. So there's all sorts of research coming out on who MHT or HRT is safe for. And they're even sort of looking at, is a low dose HRT estrogen based, is it safe for women who've had breast cancer or a history of breast cancer? So, there's a lot of studies coming out to say that a low dose of estrogen can be helpful. Now, this is certainly a very individual choice and something that you need to talk about with your doctor to find out, what is right for you. Now, if you are having symptoms, like I said, it's certainly worth, let's talk about it in the group. Let's jump on a hormone help call and, chat to me or chat to one of my team about it, because we're happy to have the conversation with you and help steer you in the right direction. But please know that, no matter what, there is no magic pill. Okay. Yes, things can dramatically reduce or improve your symptoms. But, what you really do have control over is, how you nourish your body, how you move your body, how you manage your stress. These are, basic foundations that will help you every time. Okay, ladies, I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. You can head on over to the show notes at kyliepinwell.com/podcast, where you'll find all the links, and I have a little bonus surprise waiting for you. Before we go, it would mean the world to me if you head on over to your favourite podcasts channel, subscribe and leave a review. Make sure to screenshot it, DM it to me so I can thank you personally. Then stay tuned for next week's episode. Can't wait to see you then.